I am very happy that I get the opportunity to introduce Terry Bentley Hill. Uh, she's an attorney.
Ah, thanks. Love it already. Love you guys.
She is an attorney and will share how substance use disorders and mental illness changed her life and led her to devote her career to representing defendants experiencing mental health challenges and helping end the stigma surrounding mental illness. She's a criminal defense lawyer here in Dallas. She's built a robust defense practice representing clients who have mental health issues or substance use disorders that have resulted in criminal charges. Her advocacy often results in dismissals or no bills for her clients. Hill is equally passionate about attorney wellness. She is chair of the Texas Lawyers Assistance Program for the State Bar of Texas, and she was chair of the Dallas Bar Association's Peer Assistance Committee for 4 years. Those programs literally save lawyers' lives, and those are incredible programs. So Terry, great to meet you, and looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Judge. Hi, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. I'm so glad to see you, and thank you for having me. I absolutely love the opportunity to talk to my fellow colleagues about attorney wellness, but I know there are a lot of you all who are not attorneys in this room, and what I say certainly applies to you all as well. We have caregivers in this room, and my question to you to start off with is, how do you take care of yourself? And do you take care of yourself? Now, I always must start with a disclaimer. I'm going to be talking about some very difficult things. I'm going to be talking about mental illness. I'm going to talk about substance use disorder, and I'm going to talk about suicide. And I always warn my audience because I don't want to trigger things in you, and you are not prepared for that, because obviously you can see from the title of my talk that we're going to be talking about trauma and secondhand trauma. So I say that because if I do trigger something in you and you need to leave, please leave. This is all about taking care of yourself. It will not hurt my feelings, and I encourage you always to take care of yourself. You know, I feel like I'm speaking to the choir in here. The mental health community in the criminal justice system, hallelujah. It is the most important thing I think that we can do as providers, as clinicians, as attorneys. I think in the long term, if you think about it globally, the criminal justice system, you all are my heroes. So thank you so much for doing what you do. I speak to lawyers because I have a very tragic experience with the demands that this profession has on the human being who happens to have a law degree. And I was married to an elected official who was the elected district attorney up in Amarillo. And I saw firsthand, I wasn't an attorney at the time, I saw firsthand what the profession and the toll took on him. And it turned out really tragic. And once that happened, once he took his life 27 years ago, I knew at that point, because he was an elected official and the media were live on our front yard when he died, in our home while our 4 daughters were sleeping, I had nowhere to hide. I had to do something with this tragedy, with this pain. I couldn't say my husband died of a heart attack. My husband died of, I couldn't, it was all over the news. It not only made news in the Panhandle, it made news all over the state of Texas. So I had to do something with that. But it's what I have learned along the way that I want to share with you all. But I want to say I'm going to shift courses here a little bit. I'm not going to use some of my slides. My slides are in the materials. because I just really want to talk to you all about the idea of secondhand trauma. And because of the field that we're in, how we bring ourselves to our job, and we can't help bringing ourselves to our job. And then what happens as a result of being in this field. I spoke to a young lawyer. She came into my office. She has just passed the bar. She's in a lot of distress. And I said, what's going on? And she said, this job, I don't know, this job. I said, what do you mean this job? She said, I've been through so much in my life, and now I'm doing this. I'm solving problems. I'm trying to solve problems. And she said, it's taking a real toll on me. And that is a fact that many of us experience, and it's burnout. And as they say, you know, there's fatigue, and fatigue is a feeling and a condition, and burnout is a feeling and a condition that's related to our profession. And burnout is, especially with first responders, with lawyers, with you guys working in the mental health area, clinicians, there's a lot of burnout because it takes a toll, and we aren't good at taking care of ourselves. So it is a genuine disorder that we really need to address. And one of the things that I didn't know was I didn't know what I didn't know. And what I've heard here is talking about education. And we have to tell the story. As lawyers, they tell you the most effective opening statement and closing argument is the story. We all have stories. And I am not an expert. I'm an expert in one thing, and that is surviving suicide. I'm not an expert, a mental health expert. I'm not a clinician. I just can tell you what I have learned along the way. I can tell you that I can read reports, and I can talk to psychologists and psychiatrists, and I can gather information, and it makes sense to me because I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know that there was a language of depression and that people speak a language of depression. And so I've had to learn that so I can then tell my story. And you all, I encourage you to tell your story because your story could be the keys that unlock someone else's hell. I speak all the time to lawyers groups. I go to law firms. I go wherever I'm asked. DA's offices, defense bar. I'm leaving here and going to the advanced business, what am I trying to say? Advanced business law in Dallas as soon as I leave here. Because if you ask me, I'm coming. Because I think my topic is that important. And I went to a law firm in Houston, as a matter of fact, one time, and I tell my story. I tell about how I'm a survivor of suicide with a capital S. And I get through, and usually people will come up and want to talk about it, share their story. And I happened to notice that there was a table of women in this room, and they were all talking. And I couldn't help but notice because they were very serious. And so I would talk here, and then I'd look back over there. They were still there. And finally, one of the ladies got up, and she came over to me, and she said, Terry, I want to tell you something. When I was 15 years old, my father died. And for the last 45 years, I've told people that my father died of a heart attack. Today, after you got through talking, was the first time I ever told anyone that my father died of suicide. It set me free. So your story can set other people free. We have crisis fatigue. The report, Andy Keller is my hero. I don't say that lightly. Truly, you all are, and he certainly is. He's given you the statistics about what's going on with us these days. I'm not going to go back over all of that. However, the report is as a result of the pandemic, isolation, that anxiety has increased 1,000%. And in fact, anxiety is the #1 mental health issue we have in our country right now. And you know, the government passed all of this money to deal with the pandemic and COVID-19, and this much was spent on mental health. This much. We all, I imagine, we're in agreement that the next pandemic will be the mental health pandemic. And we're already seeing that. I'm busier than I've ever been. I have parents calling me because their kids are in jail and they are scared to death and don't know what to do. I have clients calling and saying, I need help. I know we are just on the very beginning of that tidal wave. I know we're all busier than we know what to do with. You can see the symptoms of crisis fatigue, hyperarousal, or withdrawing, the isolating. So, I'm going to run through this because some of you all you work with lawyers, okay? So you can see you can spot what's going on with these lawyers. But these are some of the problems for attorneys. There's been traumas. I had a judge tell me who was a longtime district judge here in Dallas say he decided not to run again. He could not stand to look at one more crime scene photo or video. He had such PTSD, he decided not to run again. Because when you have your own trauma, and yesterday I'm curious because I was watching online and Dr. Smith asked the question, how many of you all have experienced trauma? Did people raise their hand? Okay, they did. I couldn't understand. I thought she said nobody raised their hand. And I was shocked. If nobody raised their hand and said they've experienced trauma, I mean, I wanted to come in here and shake your hand because you're rare. Because truly, you think about it. How many people have witnessed a car accident?
Everybody raised their hand.
They did? Yay. Okay, then I don't even have to go there. I'm like, wait, surely. So, I experienced my own trauma as a child. I didn't know why I started biting my fingernails at 5. I didn't know why I started picking the hair out of my part in the 7th grade. But you couldn't tell what was going on my inside by my outsides because I was an overachiever. I was a people pleaser. I made sure that I was involved in sports and in cheerleading and everything else. My insides did not match my outsides. But if you looked closely, you'd see a little girl with no fingernails and a part that was an inch wide because I kept doing this. And I'm going to tell you what that trauma does. That trauma creates energy in our body, and if we don't deal with it, it stays there. When those children were killed at that Santa Fe High School north of Houston, I had a conference that I was going to and I was going to speak at. And when I was in the 7th grade, I told you I was picking that hair. But then when I stopped and parked my car to get out of the car to go to that conference, I looked down at my lap and there was hair. There was hair on my lap because I did this and didn't even realize I was doing this because I was having a trauma reaction because not only did I lose my former husband to suicide 27 years ago, but 9 years later, my youngest daughter, who was 14 years old, also took her life. And so I thought about those parents. I thought about them, what it was going to be like when those children didn't come home. And I was doing this. I was having a trauma reaction. Attorneys suffer from depression more than any other profession. This was a study done by the American Bar Association and the Betty Ford Foundation. It's old. I bet it's a lot more. The percentages are a lot higher these days. And this is self-reporting. So we know in this room that people who have a substance use disorder, they're usually in denial. And oftentimes a person who has mental health issues don't know it until they don't have a mental health issue. They don't know what to call it. They have the language of depression, but they don't know what to call it. So 46% of attorneys during their practice years have experienced depression. 28% currently are experiencing depression. 61%, there's another study that says 61% of lawyers are experiencing anxiety. Some stress is good. We all need a little stress. But when it turns into panic attacks and sweats and sweaty hands and racing heart and no sleep, then the anxiety is interfering with our life, all of us. So there are some of the anxiety symptoms, as you can see. I had someone call me the other day and say my 29-year-old just went to the hospital thinking he was having a heart attack. What he was having was a panic attack, because a panic attack mimics a heart attack. But if you don't know that, you don't know that. That's why we have to talk about it. And what it does is the anxiety creates the cortisol drop, as all of you all know. And the cortisol drop keeps us in our sympathetic nerve system activated. So it's dropping that cortisol constantly. And if you're in a traumatic, chaotic environment constantly, it can change the wiring in the brain, and it can lead to the beast of depression. And I want to tell you about the beast of depression, which I think that is a perfect way to describe depression. I have a friend who's a lawyer here in Dallas, and she works for one of the largest banks in the country. And she tells her story, so I'm not violating any confidentiality here. She tells her story because the story is important. When she was a student at Rice, she had her first episode with bipolar 1. She had her first manic episode. And she was hospitalized. She was treated, got on medication. She did great. She graduated from Rice with honors. She goes to SMU Law. She graduates with honors. She clerks for a federal judge. She's great. She's taking her medication. She's doing everything exactly the way she's supposed to. She gets married, and she decides she's going to have a baby. And when she got pregnant, when she was trying to get pregnant, she had to go off her medication. And when she went off her medication, she said, "Terry, I met the beast of depression." Her daughter was 2 years old, and she started speaking the language of depression. Everybody would be better off without me. I'm a burden to my family. I just want to die. I don't want to live like this. I am miserable. She isolated. There is the nonverbal language of depression. She didn't want to go to work. She wouldn't talk to her colleagues. She wouldn't answer the phone. She wouldn't answer her mail. She just wanted everything. She said the weirdest thing is that she'd think about stopping at the stop sign, and after she stops at the stop sign, she's going to take her life. After she goes to the grocery store and buys milk for her daughter, she's going to take her life. She said it was never not in her mind. So one day she's tired. One day she says, "Can't do this anymore." She takes 57 Ambien, she fills up the bathtub, and she thinks, "I'm going to go to sleep, I'm going to die, I'm going to put everybody out of misery because I'm a burden to them." For whatever reason, she woke up. I don't know who wakes up from 57 Ambien, but she did, and the bathtub had drained. And she had her aha moment. Aha, I've got to do something about this. I need to do something about it, and I need to get back on my medication, and I've got to tell my story. But she said, it's the beast of depression. And, you know, it was interesting how someone, sorry, we're going back. We're going to meet him in a minute. So a doctor once, I heard him, he told me, said, "Terry, you know, depression is like psychological nausea." And I thought that is a perfect way to describe it. You know, I got on a plane with a kid, flew from Dallas to New York, and that kid started throwing up the minute we left the runway. I thought, great. But if I'd have turned around and said, "Stop that throwing up," that kid couldn't have stopped because he had motion sickness. So there was nothing he could do. And that's like depression. It's psychological nausea. For people to say you're lazy or just get up or come on, you can do it, some people can't. And I help a lot of lawyers who are facing disciplinary actions before the grievance committee. And one of the reasons why they're in front of the grievance committee is because they can't open their mail. I know it sounds, just open your mail. They can't. They're frozen. And they have cognitive distortion, which causes the thinking errors, which causes the thoughts that everybody will be better off without me. And my life changed when I met this guy. His name is Kevin Hines. And maybe some of you all know about Kevin Hines, but I'm going to tell you how he changed my life. Kevin was a speaker at an event I was emceeing in Dallas. And he told me a story beforehand that when he was 17 years old, he had just been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and that he was miserable and he wanted to die. And he wanted to be free from the pain. He was a burden to his family and he just wanted to die. And so he decided to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. And I said, Kevin, as the mother who's lost a child by suicide, what were you thinking? And he said something that I will never forget. He said, Terry, oftentimes when a person decides to die by suicide, they'll make a pact with themselves. If this happens today, I won't die today. May die tomorrow, but I won't die today. And the pact that he made with himself was, if one person asked me if I'm okay, I won't jump. Not today. And he told me about his entire day of meeting and encountering people as a 17-year-old boy. He was crying with his father, who was taking him to the city bus so he could catch the city bus to go to the bridge. And his father never once said, Kevin, are you okay? And now I'm going to talk to you parents who've experienced the exhaustion of taking care of people in your family. I don't know Mr. Hines, but I can relate to Mr. Hines. I'm sure he was exhausted. He was doing the best he could. He hugs his father goodbye for the last time, he thinks. He gets on the bus, and that bus is packed. There's one seat at the very back. And he gets on that bus, and he's 17 years old, and he's crying and sobbing all the way to the back of that bus, and it took 10 minutes to get to the bridge. And he said, not one person on that bus said, son, are you okay? What's wrong? Not one person. He gets off. He goes to the rail. He's looking over the rail, and he said, I'll never forget it. This lady started walking towards me. She had this black hair and these gigantic Chanel glasses. And she said, and he thought, okay, she's going to ask me, are you okay? But that's not what she asked him. She handed him a camera and said, will you take my picture? And he went, okay. He took her picture, handed her back the camera, and he jumped. But the thing he told me that I always tell teenagers when I'm speaking to them is the minute he jumped, he regretted it. Please, God, don't let me die. And then he talks about how he was rescued. He crushed everything from his waist down. He thought the impact didn't kill him, but he thought he was going to drown because he couldn't get back to the surface. Somehow he did. And then he felt something bumping up against his hip. And you know what's in the San Francisco Bay? He thought, I'm going to die of shark attack. But eyewitnesses said it wasn't a shark that was bumping up against him. It was a sea lion that was keeping him above the water until he could be rescued by the Coast Guard. And the Coast Guard said, son, do you know what a miracle you are? You know how many bodies we pull out of this bay? You're a miracle. And he said, yes, I know I am. But the thing is it didn't cure his bipolar disorder. He had to learn techniques to deal with his bipolar disorder. He's been hospitalized 4 times, but he has a safety net of people that he gives permission that if he becomes manic and starts writing emails, 500 emails at night, or if he becomes other signs of mania, they can approach him. And so that is when he got through with that. I thought, oh my gosh, we have got to stop minding our own business. We can all ask, are you okay? There is nothing threatening about saying, are you okay, when someone is struggling? Stepping out of your comfort zone when someone is struggling and saying, are you okay? Do you want to talk about it? In this country, we're told, mind your own business. Don't tell me how to raise my kids. Don't tell me when to mow my grass. Don't tell me when to wear a mask. Mind your own business. But when it comes to people who are struggling, We now know from Kevin Hines that one person asking that question can save a life. And I know it because I have done it. The warning signs of suicide, you all know what they are. The thing that I really like to tell especially young lawyers is the 10 by 10 by 10 rule. When they face a judge and the judge gets down on them and they feel dumb and stupid and don't feel like they can do that job, that they are too dumb to be a lawyer, what I tell them is, how will you feel about this incident 10 minutes from now? And then how are you going to feel about this 10 months from now? And how are you going to feel about this 10 years from now? I am one of those young lawyers that got chewed out by a judge on my very first plea. And I walked out of there thinking, I can't do this. I'm too stupid. I'm too stupid to be a lawyer. Well, it's been well over 10 years since that happened. I remember it, but I've thrown that experience away. I learned the lesson. And I made a rookie mistake. I deserved it. But the torture that I put myself through, I wish I had known the 10 by 10 by 10 rule. So asking the question, you know, are you okay? This is what I'm seeing. And then, of course, you know, it's a myth not to ask the next question, do you have a plan? And if you have a plan, what can we do to help you? I had a client, many of you all can relate to this. I had a client I was appointed to who was in the mental health area of the Dallas County Jail. I went to visit her. I looked at her. I could tell she was in a mental health crisis. She said, I have severe anxiety. I feel like these walls are closing in on me. You've got to get me out of here. Get me out of here. Get me out of here. She's charged with a felony. Well, fortunately, I said to her, are you okay? Well, she said, no, of course I'm not okay. I said, are you thinking of hurting yourself? She said, no, but you've got to get me out of here. I said, are you thinking of taking your life? No, but you've got to get me out of here. I said, have you ever attempted to take your life before? She said, I've thought about it, but just get me out of here. Well, she was bonded out. We reduced her felony to a misdemeanor, and we were getting ready to do the plea. And in Dallas County, there's a little defense room right off the courtroom. And there were only two of us in there, she and I. And she said to me, Terry, I Googled you, and I'm really sorry what happened to you. And I said, what do you mean? She said, no, I found out what you've been through. And she said, and I'm really sorry. She said, but I want you to know, if you hadn't asked me those questions, I would have taken my life in that jail that day. So it does matter. Ask the questions. Stop minding your own business. Now then, what I'm going to do, well, we know kind of what the recovery from depression, oftentimes it's medicine for some people. Full disclosure, it's medicine for me. I experienced my own depression clearly after the suicides. I did the isolation. I didn't want to answer the phone. I wanted to read novels every single day. Thank goodness it wasn't a vodka bottle. It was novels. If it had been vodka bottle, we'd have a different story here. But I read novel after novel after novel. That was my escape. And finally, someone said, you don't have to live like this. Your brain cannot make the chemicals you need. So I've been on medication, changed my life. I pray I don't plateau, changed my life. Cognitive behavioral therapy to stop the stinking thinking. The peer support is so important. There are support groups for lawyers that if you want to talk to me afterwards, I can give you support groups wherever you live in the state of Texas. You know, how can we take care of ourselves? You know, they say that we get about, 120 new emails a day. And you know, with the pandemic, they say we're working more because we're so tied to our computer that we don't shut it down at night. So we're really working more. And you know, I've said before, if you think about it, if you go to the mailbox 120 times a day to check your mail, your neighbor would call the cops. Because they know something, well, this isn't right. This woman is not right. But that's what we're doing, is we're that involved in other people communicating with us constantly. So you can disconnect. You guys know all of this. It's so funny. I got a phone call from this big law firm in New York and said, Terry, we speak to our associates because they are afraid to get up and go to the bathroom because they have so much to do. I said, oh, come on. She said, no, they are that intimidated. And I said, well, okay, I'll be glad to talk to them. And she said, well, what do you say? And so I go through some of the things like, why don't you suggest putting their phone in another room when they're having dinner? Oh, no, you cannot tell them that. They will never be able to do that. And I said, well, we all need sleep. Oh, you can't tell them that because if they only get 2 or 3 hours of sleep, it'll work. And I thought to myself, man, they need an intervention. They do not need a lawyer coming in and doing a lawyer wellness talk. But the thing that really tipped me off, and you all will be able to appreciate this, is that she said that the partners in that firm are hacked off because they don't understand why the associates are complaining working 14 hours a day when they had to work 16 hours a day. And I thought, there needs to be a change in the culture. And it needs to start at the top. DA's offices, whatever, need to start at the top. So those associates in your office will know it's okay to say, I need help. Raise my hand. I need help. Okay, so what can we do for ourselves? Well, one of the things Kevin Hines told me is the thing that he needs the most is sleep. And I've talked to a sleep expert, and what I found out is that our brain, of course, cycles from REM to restorative sleep. And you need the restorative sleep to scrub away the toxins from the day. And it takes our brain about 90 minutes to cycle out of those REM and restorative sleep patterns. So we really need about 8 to 9 hours of sleep. Well, I bet there aren't a whole lot of people in here who get 8 to 9 hours of sleep, but we need that. Very important. Exercise, 150 hours of 150 minutes. We'd never have a job. 150 minutes a week of exercise is like an antidepressant. It drops the dopamine in the brain. It floods those synapses and neurotransmitters start producing. It's like an antidepressant for some people. However, I do all that and I still need meds. It's not enough for everybody. There's a biological aspect to my brain that needs the medication. All right, liquids. All right, so I talked to a geriatric psychiatrist because over 16,000 lawyers are practicing law in the state of Texas. TLAP, as Judge said, I am chair of the TLAP committee. And one of the things, TLAP has evolved, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about TLAP here in a minute, but what TLAP really started to address attorneys' substance use disorders. Then it transitioned into the mental health arena, which we get most of our calls because of mental health issues. And now we're transitioning into cognitive decline issues because we've got so many attorneys over the age of 65 practicing law. So I talked to a geriatric psychiatrist and I said, what can we do? What do we want to tell our older attorneys? And he said, the first thing you can do is, number one, of course, we all need sleep. But number two is to drink more water. Because as we get older, we become dehydrated. Think about an orange shriveling up. That's what happens with our brain. When you start doing the charades, like I couldn't even come up with Lucille Ball's name. I was like, she has red hair, her best friend's Ethel, her kid's name is Ricky, and someone said, are you talking about Lucille Ball? I'm like, yeah, I knew I was dehydrated and I needed water. And it's funny because when I have those memory lapses and I drink a bunch of water, it makes a difference. I'm here to tell you. And I was not a water drinker, I was a tea drinker. And so the water really does make a difference. Light. You talk to somebody up in the Northeast, in the Northwest, they've got serious depression issues, and they need to get down to the South to get that dopamine dump from the sun. That sun is so important. And fortunately, in the state of Texas, we really don't have that problem. But even so, there are some people who really do need that vitamin D boost to help with their dopamine. Okay, let's talk about mindfulness. And I want to tell you what mindfulness means to me. You hear a lot about that. Well, mindfulness means to me is keeping my head right where my feet are. Because I have a tendency to relitigate everything that happened in my life. And when I go back there, it's very dark. And I have a tendency to write a script for the future about what may happen or what's going to happen or the other shoe's going to drop. And when I go there, I'm in anxiety. So to stay out of depression and to stay out of anxiety, I stay right here. And it's a very conscious decision. It is noticing your baseball cap. It is noticing that red shirt. It's being very deliberate to notice what is going on right here because I'm safe right here in the present. My daughters are safe right now because I have a tendency to worry about them all dying. Truthful. But I know today, right here, they're safe. So I have to be that deliberate. And there are so many apps, the Calm app, the Mindfulness app, that breathing app, how important it is to breathe. If you get ready to go into a courtroom, it is so important to take very deep breaths, breathe in 4 seconds, hold it 4 seconds, and then release it for 4 seconds. Do it 4 times. It will calm that sympathetic system down and activate your parasympathetic system. It really is important to breathe and be mindful. Okay, I'm going to end with gratitude because I'm about through here. Gratitude, there are studies that show that gratitude can change the way we think. The day after my husband died, a lady walked into my house and she said, "Terry, you need to write a gratitude list." And I looked at her like she was crazy. I said, "What?" I said, "I have nothing to be grateful for. Are you kidding me? I'm now the single mother of 4 girls. I have nothing to be grateful for." And she said, "Well, let's think about this." She said, "Do you have a roof over your head? Do you have food on your table? Do you have 4 little girls who love you? Do you have a bed that you sleep in? And do you have legs that'll take you from that bed to your bathroom sink?" "Yes." And she said, "Do you have a toothbrush that you use every single morning?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Seems to me you have a whole lot to be grateful for. Why don't you write a gratitude list?" So since April the 9th of 1995, I have written a gratitude list. And I'm certainly grateful for the big things that I have in my life. But I put the small things on that gratitude list too, like gas to get me to this hotel. The fact that I can talk to you all. The fact that I'm aware of all the incredible things that you're doing. The fact that I can watch the bamboo in my backyard sway back and forth. And that I can feel the air kick on in my office. Those very small things I'm grateful for. Because see, what I've learned is that we're powerless over people, places, and things. We cannot prevent or control what happens in our life. However, we can control our perspective. And perspective is a choice. And so writing a gratitude list is the best thing that I can do for myself in the morning and at night. I want to talk to you lawyers and even really anyone who works with lawyers. The Texas Lawyers Assistance Program is a very valuable asset to the state of Texas. It is an arm of the Texas Bar, but it is not part of the state bar. It is completely independent. And you can make a confidential phone call when you're worried about a judge, a lawyer, or a law student. Or if you are a judge, a lawyer, or a law student, you can call TLAP and make a confidential call about a colleague or yourself. And then they will answer the phone 24/7. It's an incredible staff. Many of you all know Erica Grigg. She's a director of TLAP. Unbelievable what they do. They will make a referral. Every town in the state of Texas, they have a list of care providers. So if you need a therapist, or if your friend needs a therapist, and you've stopped minding your own business, and you've talked to them, or you don't know what to say to them, you call TLAP. And they will send a volunteer like me. There are 1,000 volunteers in the state of Texas who have signed confidentiality agreements with the Texas Lawyers Assistance Program, that if there is a lawyer struggling and I am the appropriate person to talk to that lawyer, they will call me and say, Terry, please contact this lawyer. And I will contact the lawyer and I will say, hello, I'm Terry Bentley Hill. I'm calling you for the Texas Lawyers Assistance Program. I am not the grievance committee. I am the Texas Lawyers Assistance Program, and I'm here to help you so you don't visit the grievance committee. And every lawyer I've called has been relieved. No one has been angry because they needed the help and they were glad to get the help. Also, there is a fund. It's called the Sharon Crowley Trust. And if you're a solo practitioner or you do not have the insurance or your deductible is so high that you can't get the help you need, there's scholarships available. So you just call TLAP, you make an application, and there are scholarships available for inpatient, for outpatient therapy, for whatever you need. We are a resource of help. So I encourage you to use TLAP. And there's the numbers. You can see 1-800-343-TLAP. And then I want to just show you my sweet husband. He has been such a gift. And during the pandemic, I just love him. And he's just so sweet. He came in, he took on 5 very, very wounded women and married into this family. He's a saint. Anyway, during the pandemic, we were walking. What else are we going to do? We were walking. He's walked every day since July the 8th of 2020. He's like Forrest Gump. And so one of the things he wanted to do was climb the tallest peak in Texas, Guadalupe Peak. And so that was a goal that we set for ourselves. We worked and tried to get into shape to get up that mountain because goals really make a difference in our lives. And whatever they are, whether they're professional or whether recreational, make a goal and have fun and take care of yourself. You keep doing what you're doing. If you ever need any help, I am very easy to get hold of. I've got other resources. I can send you to a doctor who knows how to work with damaged amygdalas and trauma. I mean, if you need anything, get hold of me. I am willing to talk to people anytime, any place. And I want to thank you all. Safe trip going home. Thank you to the people online. I hope that each one of you all benefits from something here today. But thank you all very much for having me. I appreciate it.